I married my neighbor in a flash. I've always been frail, and he's unable to have children. We were supposed to live a distant and indifferent life together. But then I discovered that physical contact with him somehow improved my health. So, I started finding every excuse to get closer to him. My body did improve, but the way he started looking at me became unusual. During lunch, Lucy, the neighborhood gossip queen, dropped by to chat with my mom. "Have you heard?" she whispered conspiratorially. "The Grays next door, well, their son Ivan, turns out he's, impotent." My mom gasped. "No way." Lucy nodded with theatrical flair. "I heard it myself just the other day at the restaurant where I work. He was having dinner with a date. She seemed quite taken with him at first, but when he brought out his medical report to explain, she lost it. Poured a whole glass of water on him and told him that someone like him should just stay at home. That poor boy," my mom lamented, shaking her head. "Such a fine young man. What a shame." She sighed heavily. "You mustn't tell anyone else, though." "Of course not. I'm not that kind of person," Lucy assured her. Listening to them killed my appetite. I set my fork down and headed upstairs. In my room, I opened the window, instinctively glancing at the neighboring yard. Ivan was there, seated under a tree. His long legs were crossed, and his slender hands held a book resting on his lap. His expression was calm and focused, completely absorbed in his reading. Although Ivan grew up next door and was like an older brother figure to me, we were never close. He was always the golden boy, handsome, intelligent, and the pride of the neighborhood. 5 years older than me. He was finishing high school when I started junior high. By the time I was in high school, he was in college, and when I went to university, he had left to study abroad. By the time he returned, my health had deteriorated, and my years-long crush on him remained unspoken. Thinking about what happened to him, about someone throwing water in his face, about his injury, made my heart ache. Lost in my thoughts, I kept staring at him. As if sensing my gaze, Ivan suddenly turned his head. Startled, I ducked behind the curtains, my pulse racing so loudly I could hear it in my ears. After lunch, my mom left for a shopping trip with her friends. When I woke from my nap, the sky was already darkening. Ivan's yard was empty, but the lights inside his house were on. What's he doing at this hour? As I was wondering, the doorbell rang. Thinking it was my mom, I shuffled downstairs in my pajamas and slippers. But when I opened the door, I found Ivan standing there instead. My first instinct was to dig a hole and bury myself. He looked as composed and impeccable as always, while I was disheveled and unkempt. I immediately dropped my gaze to the floor, too embarrassed to meet his eyes. Is something wrong?" I asked nervously, my toes curling in my slippers. His voice was cool and pleasant. "I borrowed a book from your dad. He said I could pick it up from you." "Oh, right, sure." I called my dad, but he didn't pick up, probably in a meeting. "I guess you can look for it yourself," I said awkwardly, stepping aside to let him in. "His study is just over there." "Thank you," he said with a polite nod. After showing Ivan to the study, I rushed to the bathroom to fix my hair and straighten my clothes. When I felt somewhat presentable, I returned to help him search for the book. Just as I reached the doorway, a familiar voice rang out loudly from the front door. It was Vicky, my best friend. "Anna, let me tell you something explosive." "Guess what?" "Our neighborhood's heartthrob, Ivan, has sexual dysfunction." The moment Vicky's voice rang out, I saw Ivan's back stiffen noticeably. Panicking, I rushed to the study doorway and shot Vicky a warning look, silently begging her to stop. But she just blinked in confusion. "What's wrong with your eyes? Are you having a spasm? Are you feeling unwell? Anyway, do you know who I'm talking about? Ivan, the super hot guy who lives next door. Can you believe it? All those love letters he used to reject back in the day, it's like karma finally caught up to him." I mean, isn't it ironic? You'd think, her rambling continued as I caught a glimpse of Ivan's expression out of the corner of my eye. His brow furrowed slightly, and his thin lips pressed into a tight line. Without thinking, I darted forward, clamped my hand over Vicky's mouth, and pleaded, my voice trembling, please, just stop talking. It didn't take long to confirm one thing: Lucy was, in fact, a big mouth. The rumor about Ivan's condition had spread across the neighborhood like wildfire. For 2 days, his mother hadn't even left the house. But now, early in the morning, she came knocking at ours, her face heavy with worry. Ivan is such a good boy. How could this happen to him? He's our only child. I've given up on him carrying on the family name. I just hope this doesn't crush him mentally. My mom tried to console her. He seems to be holding up well. Honestly, it's you two who need to stay strong for his sake. Don't let him see you upset. But Ivan's mom shook her head. You don't understand. He's always been the type to bottle everything up since he was little. My mom's usual words of comfort weren't working. After a moment, her face lit up with an idea. She grabbed my arm and brought me into the conversation. Look at Anna, she said, gesturing toward me. She looks healthy, but she's been frail since childhood. A few years ago, she started having sudden bouts of breathlessness. We'd been to countless hospitals, but no one could find the cause, let alone cure it. She's in no condition to have children. So we've decided to keep her by our side for life. Hearing this, the two mothers exchanged sighs of mutual understanding. And then, as if struck by the same thought at the same time, they turned to each other with brightened eyes. Your daughter is frail, and my son can't have kids. Aren't they a perfect match? Your son can't find a wife, and my daughter's unlikely to marry. It's like fate brought them together. Let's make it happen. Deal. And just like that, Ivan and I were married in a whirlwind, thanks to the two matchmaker moms. I had loved him for years, so when my mom told me about the arrangement, I didn't want to refuse. What surprised me was that he agreed, too. To help us build our bond, our parents even gave us a house of our own to live in. The idea of moving in with Ivan made me blush furiously. I'd packed my things ages ago, but delayed until evening, earning my mom's increasingly impatient glares. Finally, under her exasperated gaze, I set off. When I arrived, Ivan was in the living room reading. The moment he saw me, he stood up, took my suitcase without a word, and carried it toward the bedroom. And no need, I stammered. I can take the guest room. At my suggestion, his cool, distant eyes flashed with a faint trace of hurt. I suddenly remembered what Mrs. Gray had said, that Ivan was prideful and kept his emotions buried. Someone as accomplished and confident as him must have struggled deeply with his condition. Would he think I was rejecting or pitying him if we slept apart? As he turned toward the guest room with my suitcase, I quickly stepped forward, took it from him, and headed straight into the master bedroom. We'll sleep together, I declared. What? He looked at me, puzzled. My cheeks burned. We're married. We should sleep in the same room. He stared at me for a moment, then let out a soft chuckle. All right. Sharing a bed with Ivan was both thrilling and nerve-wracking. Despite being on the same mattress, I stayed at the very edge, practically hanging off, afraid to move a muscle. It was my first time sharing a bed with a man, let alone the man I had secretly loved for so long. My thoughts swirled, and it was a long time before I finally fell asleep. When I woke up, the first thing I saw was Ivan's face, so close that I could see the faint stubble on his jaw. It was then I realized I was sprawled across him, my head resting on his chest. I woke up in a panic, realizing that my hand had somehow ended up under his thin sleep shirt. How did this happen? Just last night, I had been lying so far from him. Was I using him as a pillow in my sleep? Oh my God. Before Ivan could wake up, I quickly scrambled out of bed, covering my burning face as I fled the scene. Unsure how to face him after this, I decided to go for a walk. By the time I felt tired and decided to head back, an hour had passed. I was surprised. Given my usual stamina, I shouldn't have been able to walk for so long. Upon reflection, I realized that since waking up today, my body felt significantly lighter. Fortunately, for the next few nights, I didn't end up clinging to Ivan in my sleep again. During the day, he went to work while I stayed at home, drawing up some sketches on my computer. Now that he had taken over the company, Ivan was busier than ever, often staying late into the night. On the other hand, because of my health, I went to bed early each night. It often felt like we were strangers sharing a bed. One night, while I was in the middle of a deep sleep, I suddenly felt as if someone had wrapped their hands around my neck, making it impossible to breathe. I woke up with a start, gasping for air. The person next to me was instantly awake. Flipping on the light. "What's wrong?" Ivan asked, his voice full of concern. I shook my head weakly, barely able to say, "And nothing." But I couldn't bring myself to look at him. I had always known this moment might come, when I would have an episode in front of him, but I never imagined it would happen so soon. So quickly, he had witnessed the most vulnerable side of me. I struggled to breathe, and tears welled up in my eyes. Before we were married, my mom had told Ivan not to worry about me during my episodes. Just let her be, she'll be fine after about half an hour. But Ivan didn't follow her instructions. Instead, he reached out to touch my forehead. The instant his skin made contact, a cool sensation rushed through me. One that I craved desperately. When he felt that my temperature had returned to normal and tried to pull his hand away, I immediately grabbed it. That sensation intensified. It was as if an energy I desperately needed was flowing from his hand to mine, soothing the pain that had tormented me for so long. For the first time, I felt relief. It felt so good that I lost all sense of rationality. I instinctively sought more. By the time my mind began to clear, Ivan's clothes had been removed, and we were pressed closely together. My rational mind screamed that I should pull away, but my body only pulled him closer. "Sorry, I just need to rub a little." My face nuzzled into his chest, desperate for every bit of the energy he was giving. His breathing grew heavier. I froze for a moment, then met his gaze, only to find a deep, suppressed desire in his eyes. My heart raced, and for a second, I panicked. But then, remembering his condition, all I could feel was sympathy. "It's fine, even if you don't want to be with me, I won't mind." I also. The confession almost slipped from my lips, but it caught in my throat. Instead, I repeated, "I just need to rub a little longer, that's all." Ivan, however, seemed amused by my words. He rolled over, pinning me beneath him. "Just rubbing? How about we take it a little further?" Before I could even react, his lips were already on mine. The sensation of his kiss sent a wave of tingles through me, and I didn't resist. Instead, I met him with quiet anticipation. Perhaps it was my subconscious response that triggered him. His kiss suddenly turned aggressive. He didn't stop until I was almost out of breath. Then, as if realizing my struggle, he pulled away, only to trail his lips down my neck. Gasping for air, I barely regained my senses in time. As he began to lean in for another kiss, I placed my hand against his chest, pushing him back slightly. "Please," I said, my voice trembling with pleading. Ivan paused for a moment, then bit down on his frustration, his jaw clenching. He got up and walked into the bathroom. The sound of running water echoed from the bathroom. I curled up under the blanket, my mind in chaos. I knew exactly what he meant by "take it further." But he had a condition, and I didn't want him to push himself to satisfy me, hurting himself in the process. I could only blame myself for being so desperate for that cool, soothing touch. Ivan was a normal man with normal desires and needs. After a while, Ivan came out of the bathroom and got back into bed. He turned off the light. I wanted to apologize for what had happened, but the last thing I wanted was to drive a knife into his heart. No matter how I framed it, the words would hurt. In the end, I stayed silent. I got up early the next morning, planning to make him breakfast as an apology. But to my surprise, he was already awake and had left the house by the time I got up. On the dining table was a breakfast he had prepared. It was warm, just right to eat. For the past few days, we had taken turns to make breakfast, whoever woke up first. As I ate, I couldn't help but smile. Living under the same roof as the man I had secretly loved for over a decade. It felt like a dream come true. After finishing my meal, I went out for another walk. This time, I walked for 2 hours. So, last night wasn't just a figment of my imagination, being physically close to Ivan really made me feel better. As I reveled in my happiness, the images of last night's intimate moments flashed in my mind. My cheeks flushed. I can't just go and hug him every night, can I? At that moment, Vicky's call came in. Anna, there's a college reunion party tonight. Will you come with me? I wasn't fond of crowded events. I didn't really keep in touch with my college classmates either, so I was planning to decline. But then she sweetly added, you know how I feel about Mike from college. Please come with me, or I'll feel awkward. I couldn't say no to that. Alright, I'll come with you. Great. I'll pick you up from your place. Oh, actually, I've moved. Let's meet at the hotel instead. I hadn't told her about the wedding yet, so I wasn't sure how to bring it up. You've moved? Yeah, I'll explain everything when I see you. When I met Vicky outside the hotel, I was about to tell her about my impromptu wedding to Ivan. But she was already staring eagerly ahead, oblivious to what I wanted to say. It's Mike. Come on, let's go. I fell behind a little so she could chat with her crush. As we entered the party, everyone was gathered around Olive, the campus belle. Oh my God, Olive. Your diamond ring is huge. Is that your engagement ring? Yes, I didn't want him to get such a big one, but he insisted on being so flashy. What can I do? Olive smiled as she replied. But her eyes flickered toward me. Anna's here. Anna, do you have a boyfriend now? The moment she spoke, I knew she was up to no good. Back in school, the boy she liked had liked me instead, and since then, she'd made a point of targeting me. I was genuinely speechless. Before I could respond, she continued with a mocking smile, oh, wait, I almost forgot. With your health issues? I guess no one would dare to pursue you. Her words clearly targeted me, causing the mood in the room to freeze. Vicky, who had been fawning over Mike, suddenly dropped her cheerful expression, hands on her hips, ready to confront Olive. I stopped Vicky's movement, looked at Olive, and replied, I don't have a boyfriend, but I do have a husband now. The room erupted into astonished murmurs. So fast? Everyone gasped. After all, we had only graduated a year ago, and with my health condition, people thought I wouldn't be able to get married. No one expected that I would be the first one to get married. Vicky seemed a little stunned. She leaned closer and whispered in my ear, you're not joking, are you? Really? Who's the lucky guy? Ivan. Just saying his name made my cheeks flush. At the mention of his name, Vicky's eyes widened. Perhaps Vicky's reaction led Olive to misunderstand. First, she was shocked, then a disdainful expression spread across her face. I don't believe it. If you don't believe it, that's fine. Olive hesitated for a moment before continuing, all right, how about this? My fiancé is coming to pick me up soon. You should have your husband pick you up too, so we can all see if what you're saying is true. How about that? I was a bit conflicted. Ivan was really busy and often worked late into the night. I didn't want to waste his time with such trivial matters. I was about to refuse, but before I could say anything, Vicky interjected, I'll show you just how amazing Anna's husband is, let this arrogant woman see for herself. After taking a jab at Olive, Vicky whispered to me, we'll talk about your secret marriage later, but for now, don't let Olive get away with this. While everyone sat down to eat, I sent Ivan a message. I'm at a classmate dinner tonight. Could you pick me up later? Then I added, it's okay if you're busy though. Before I could even send the message, his reply came through, okay. Just that one word made my heart flutter with joy. Olive's boyfriend arrived driving a Porsche. Despite being a little older, shorter, and balding, people still couldn't help but admire Olive for her choice. Olive basked in the admiration but continued to shoot disdainful glances at me. Anna, where's your husband? Is he really coming, or were you just lying to us? Or maybe he's not impressive enough to show up? Her words had barely left her lips when a Rolls-Royce came to a halt in front of us. Ivan stepped out of the car, first taking my hand and then introducing himself to everyone. Hello, I'm Anna's husband. Ivan's hand was large and warm. As he held mine, I felt a cold yet comforting sensation rush through me, and my palms began to sweat with nervousness. As soon as he appeared, all eyes were on him. With his handsome features, tall figure, and the unmistakable air of nobility and elegance in every gesture, Ivan was the center of attention wherever he went. Are you Ivan Gray? A girl recognized him and gasped. Ivan and I went to the same university. Though he was 5 years ahead of us, every year during the most popular campus couple selections, he would always be paraded around. Ivan smiled and nodded. Vicky turned smugly toward Olive. Well? Doesn't Anna's husband compare well to your boyfriend? Olive's face darkened, and jealousy surged in her eyes. But then, for some reason, she started to smile. Anna, I thought you were something special, but I didn't realize you ended up marrying a man with sexual dysfunction. Did everyone know? Ivan Sr. is, well, let's just say, not capable downstairs. When he went on a blind date with me, I got his medical report. I even have pictures. Let me show you all. I was stunned. I hadn't expected that Olive was the one who had gone on a date with Ivan that day. Ivan was such a proud man. How hard must it be for him to be publicly humiliated like this? I wanted to stop Olive, but it was already too late. The people who had seen the medical report turned to look at Ivan, some with surprise, some with disdain, and some with a look of malicious glee. Olive's taunting didn't stop there. This is hilarious. A sickly man, a cripple who can't perform, what a perfect match. My anger flared. Shut up. I glared at Olive. I didn't mind being laughed at, but I couldn't bear for Ivan to be ridiculed. If it weren't for me being so stubborn, would things have turned out this way? I didn't dare to look at Ivan. My eyes were red, and I glared fiercely at Olive. I rarely lost my temper, and usually, I spoke softly and gently. Olive was startled by my outburst. But soon, she regained her composure, a look of disdain plastered on her face. I won't shut up. What are you going to do about it? You can't stop me from speaking the truth, can you? The more you hate hearing it, the more I'll say it. Your husband, Ivan, is. My anger erupted completely. My hand clenched into a fist. I wanted to hit Olive. But Ivan stepped in, pulling me into his arms and gently patting my head. Sweetheart, let me handle this, okay? His gaze carried a reassuring strength, and I nodded silently. Seeing me calm down, Ivan turned to Olive. That medical report is fake. How is that possible? Do you think we're all fools? As soon as Olive finished speaking, the class president spoke up. It looks like it really is fake. There's no hospital stamp on it. People zoomed in on the image and nodded. It's true. Olive's face turned pale. Ivan continued, You've asked my mother's friend to set us up several times. My mother couldn't refuse, so she arranged for me to meet with you. I had no interest in you, and to put an end to it once and for all, I created that fake medical report. Even when I showed you the report, you still wanted to be with me. After I rejected you again, you got so angry that you threw water at me. Olive tried to speak, but Ivan didn't give her the chance. I have a recording from that day. If you deny it, I have no problem letting everyone hear it. Now. Olive was completely silent. Everyone understood what had happened. So Ivan was telling the truth. Vicky was the first to speak, her voice full of mockery. So you mocked Anna because you were jealous. You couldn't have him, so you wanted to ruin her. My God. The others looked at Olive with a mixture of pity and disdain. At this point, Olive should have left to save face, but she still wasn't done. She stared at Ivan and asked, "Even if you don't like me, you shouldn't like this sickly woman." She pointed at me. Ivan's face darkened completely. She may be physically weak, but she has a kind heart, a pure innocence. I love her. She's worth my love. When Ivan said this, his deep eyes were fixed on me. I could clearly see the tenderness in his gaze. It must have been a misunderstanding. Ivan's voice continued, "You've insulted my wife repeatedly. So I'll give you a little gift." He placed special emphasis on the word gift. Under Olive's panicked gaze, Ivan turned to Olive's boyfriend and said, "At last night's business dinner, the man beside Olive was not you." Upon hearing this, Olive's boyfriend's face changed multiple times, as if he had recalled something. In the end, Olive's boyfriend slapped her across the face. "Bitch! Didn't you say last night you were having dinner with your best friend? So you were actually out there flirting with other bosses. You went off the grid last night, didn't you? You were with that man, weren't you? I've spent so much money on you, and this is how you repay me? Just wait, I'll teach you a lesson you'll never forget." His slaps kept landing on Olive. Olive tried to dodge. But her screams filled the air as she denied everything. "I didn't. He's slandering me. I really didn't." It wasn't until the class president called the police that Olive and her boyfriend were taken away, bringing the farce to an end. After the chaos, I hesitated all the way home. Once we were in the house, I turned to Ivan and said, "I'm sorry. It's my fault. I almost embarrassed you. But you were so clever to say the medical report was fake. If you hadn't done that, I don't think I could ever face you again." My voice grew softer with every word. Ivan raised an eyebrow. "Do you think everything I said in front of your classmates was a lie?" "Well, wasn't it?" I reflexively responded before realizing my mistake. I shouldn't have undermined him when he was trying to defend his dignity. But I still wanted him to understand my feelings. I looked at him seriously and said, "Ivan, no matter what kind of person you are, to me, you're the best." Ivan froze for a moment, then smiled. "Actually." He began to speak, but my phone rang. Interrupting him. It was Vicky calling. I quickly answered. The moment I picked up, Vicky's voice blared through the phone so loudly it almost pierced my eardrums. "Anna, are you trying to get yourself killed? You get married so suddenly and don't tell me?" I nervously glanced at Ivan and explained to Vicky, trying to placate her. "I'm sorry, Yao Yao. I really didn't know how to bring it up. Please don't be mad at me." "I'm mad, all right. I'm telling you, you might lose me as a friend. I'm really sorry. I was wrong." Vicky's fury was immense, and despite my best efforts to calm her down, she wasn't having it. At that moment, Ivan spoke up. "This is my fault. I should have told you all about it as soon as possible." His tone was sincere. This was the first time I'd seen Ivan like this. Vicky paused on the other end of the phone, then stammered, "Well, what do we do now? Come over to our place for dinner this weekend. I'll personally apologize to you. Is that all right?" "That sounds much better." With that, Vicky happily hung up the phone. "Thank you," I said, feeling grateful to Ivan. Having been so physically weak as a child, I spent most of my time at home and had very few friends. So Vicky was really important to me. We don't need to be so polite with each other. Ivan's voice was cold. But there was something about it that tugged at my heart. That night, Ivan and I lay in bed, a certain distance still separating us. But the cool, healing energy from him seemed to beckon, tempting me to get closer. I really wanted to snuggle up to him. Gathering my courage, I shifted closer to him, hidden under the covers. But Ivan, like a startled bunny, immediately moved away to the edge of the bed. On the weekend, Vicky and 2 other friends came over. Ivan cooked a huge meal himself, and everyone ate until they were full. Afterward, they dragged me into the bedroom, closing the door to keep Ivan out while he washed the dishes. Vicky and I had lived on the same street for a while, so she already knew Ivan well. But the other 2 were meeting him for the first time. Wow, he's seriously so handsome. Anna, you hit the jackpot. He's even better looking than a celebrity. Handsome and rich, can I have someone like him too? Listening to them, Vicky couldn't help but pour cold water on the conversation. What's so good about him? He has a disability. Doesn't that mean Anna's going to be a widow after marriage? But I've seen his posture, it doesn't look like there's anything wrong with him. Before she could finish, everyone quickly understood. I felt my face turning bright red. Alright, let's stop talking about this. We spent the whole afternoon chatting, and as they were leaving, Vicky and the others reminded me, don't forget to open the gifts we gave you. I was curious about what they'd gotten me. After seeing them off, I hurried back to the bedroom. The first box was from Vicky, an ornament for the living room. But when I opened the second box, things took a different turn. It was a set of sexy lingerie. I couldn't look any longer, quickly closing the box and moving to the third one. This time, I wanted to dig a hole and hide in it. Oh my God, what kind of friends do I have? They got me a sex toy. I was still frozen in shock when I heard footsteps approaching. Ivan was coming into the bedroom. I hastily stuffed everything into my pillow. Mom and Dad want us to come over for dinner tomorrow. Want to go? Sure. That evening, Ivan was off work, and we lay in bed early together. But I couldn't sleep at all. I was desperate to be closer to him, to have more intimate contact. For the sake of my health, I decided to be more proactive. Ivan, are you asleep? I asked softly. No. I shifted closer to him, mustering up the courage to ask. Can you hold me? The moment the words left my lips, I could feel his body tense up. I've noticed that whenever I have physical contact with you, my body feels better. I'm serious, I'm not lying. Before, I would cough for a long time every morning and evening, but since that night when I rubbed against you, I haven't coughed once since. He didn't respond, and I felt a bit disappointed. It's okay if you don't want to. I was about to turn around, facing away from him. But then he suddenly pulled me into his arms. He held me tightly. Through our sleepwear, there was very little skin-to-skin contact, so I gathered my courage and asked, could I put my hand inside? He didn't answer, but instead removed his own sleepwear. Not only that, but he also started removing mine. I immediately felt nervous. Ivan, what are you doing? This is the only way we can have better contact, don't you think? His voice had turned husky. Hearing that, I felt a bit embarrassed. He was just trying to think of me, and here I was, assuming. Energy surged around me, enveloping me in warmth, and I let out a soft sigh in comfort. But in the quiet of the night, that sound felt particularly charged with intimacy. Realizing this, I bit my lip and kept quiet. The energy around me was cold. But I felt nothing but heat, his body like a furnace next to mine. His breath grew heavier. My face was pressed against his collarbone, and I could feel his Adam's apple moving, as if he were trying to suppress some urge. Though I had no experience, I could tell Ivan wanted me. But I also knew he couldn't go all the way. I couldn't help but feel guilty. Yet I continued to absorb the energy from him. It was as though my body was reacting to something, but I couldn't tell if it was my imagination or if Ivan was indeed aroused beneath me. The atmosphere between us grew more and more charged with tension. It seemed like Ivan couldn't hold back anymore. He pulled the cover slightly aside, letting in a chill. His hand moved up, brushing against something hard under my pillow. "What's this?" He curiously pulled it out. In the dim light of the moon, the clear outline of something unmistakably male was now visible. Ivan took a deep breath, his voice dark as he spoke. "Anna, if you want it, I can give it to you. Why settle for a fake when the real thing is better?" "That's not it," I said, my voice trembling as I tried to explain. This was a wedding gift from Vicky and the others. I swear. I haven't used it." "Then why is it under your pillow?" Because. I was still gathering my thoughts when Ivan kissed me. After the kiss, I felt weak all over, too dazed to explain. Ivan, however, spoke first. "Anna, let me help you. Is that okay?" His voice was deep and persuasive. I felt as if I were being hypnotized, nodding in agreement. By the time I realized what was happening, it was already too late. I spent the entire night with Ivan. And woke up late in the morning when the sun was already shining through. As soon as I opened my eyes, I was met with Ivan's warm, smiling gaze. Thinking back to last night's events, I couldn't help but bury my face in the sheets, feeling mortified. But Ivan pulled me out of the covers and into his arms. I buried my head in his chest, too shy to look at him. To ease the tension, I tried to change the subject. "So your medical report really was fake?" "Yes," Ivan responded. "Not just the medical report, everything I said yesterday was true." Yesterday. I suddenly remembered what he'd told Olive, that he liked me, and only me. Does that mean he really likes me? My heart raced, but I didn't dare to confirm it. I just wanted to carefully hold on to this fragile, almost dreamlike feeling. I shared the news with my 3 closest friends. "Congratulations, Anna. You really got lucky. I told you I have a great eye for men." They were happy for me, but I couldn't help but feel uneasy. But if his body is perfect, why did he want to marry me? He could have so many choices, yet he chose me, someone so fragile and sickly. Vicky boldly guessed. "Anna, do you think Ivan might have secretly liked you for years?" Impossible. For more than 10 years, it had always been me secretly admiring him. Liking him from afar. Ever since we had that heart-to-heart, Ivan would keep me up late every night. Naturally, I'd end up sleeping in and waking up late. One day, after Ivan hurried out, he contacted me shortly after. "Anna, I forgot to take an important document. Could you bring it to me?" "Okay." I quickly found the document and took a cab to his office. When I arrived at the company, I walked up to the front desk. "Could you please pass this document to Mr. Gray?" The receptionist immediately responded. "Is it Ms. Gray? The CEO has instructed that if you come, he'll show you up." The use of the title Ms. Gray made me feel a little embarrassed. I nodded and followed the receptionist into the elevator, heading straight to the top floor. Ivan's secretary knocked on the office door, and I heard Ivan's voice from inside. "Come in." When I entered, he was sitting at his desk, focused on handling documents, his expression serious. I couldn't help but think, a man who's serious about his work is so handsome. Maybe my gaze was too intense, because Ivan looked up. When he saw me, his expression softened. He stood up and walked over to me. "Thank you, babe." "No need to thank me. You go ahead with your work, I'll leave now." I started to leave. But Ivan pulled me into his arms, pinning me against the door. A flurry of kisses followed. Dizzy from the kiss, I heard his voice. "Since you're already here, how about we share some energy?" I stumbled my way out of Ivan's office. Turning down his offer to have a driver take me home, I decided to grab a cab myself. As I passed the break room, I overheard some conversation that made me pause instinctively. "The CEO's wife came today, did you see her?" "I saw her. She looks so fragile, like a gust of wind could blow her over. I don't know why the CEO likes someone like that." Sigh. To be honest, I don't think the CEO actually likes her. I think he's just using her to get back at Charlotte. The CEO wife is just lucky to be the one who benefits from it. Their words stung my heart. Just then, a stern female voice interrupted, "What are you gossiping about during work hours?" "Sorry, Charlotte. We were just joking around." The group apologized before leaving the break room. I suppressed the discomfort rising in my chest and was about to leave. But the woman they had referred to as Charlotte noticed me and walked over. Before I could speak, she started to explain, "Ma'am, please don't misunderstand. It's not what you think between the CEO and me." Her words were meant to clarify, yet as she spoke, she looked toward Ivan's office. Tears welling in her eyes. It was so obvious, it felt like she was digging herself into a hole. I forced a smile. "It's okay, I won't misunderstand." Charlotte was momentarily caught off guard, her awkward laugh following as she watched me leave. On my way back, I kept trying to reassure myself. The rumors couldn't be taken seriously, and, even if they were true, even if Ivan married me just to get back at Charlotte, I was still happy. As long as he only loved me during our marriage, that was enough. After all, he had been my secret crush for over 10 years. But even with that thought, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in my heart. I couldn't sleep. I waited until Ivan returned late at night after his overtime. After showering, he lay down beside me. I asked him, "Ivan, why did you marry me?" He paused, clearly surprised that I was still awake. Then he gently pulled me into his arms. "I didn't want to get married at first, but suddenly, I just wanted to." His answer made my heart sink a little. So, was it true what the rumors said? Did he marry me just because he had an argument with Charlotte? I kept the matter buried deep inside, as if it had never happened. The next time I visited Ivan's office, it was because he had been working overtime for several days and I missed him. But once again, I overheard more gossip. Employees at Ivan's company were talking about him having a sexual dysfunction. They said that's why he broke up with Charlotte. I immediately told Ivan about what I had heard. His expression turned serious as he instructed someone to investigate it. While I was resting in the lounge on the top floor of the company, Charlotte came to find me again. "Ma'am, please don't be upset. I know the rumors are false. Once was a coincidence, twice was intentional." So, I didn't bother responding and just gave a perfunctory reply. Charlotte's expression froze for a moment before she quickly recovered. "At the beginning, Ivan and I were very passionate in bed. There's no way he has problems," she said casually. Her words made my hands tighten on my lap. And I looked at her. "You don't need to keep coming here to provoke me. No matter what you feel for Ivan, I'm the one married to him now." I laid it out bluntly. She stopped pretending. "So what if you're married to him? The one he really cares about is me." I don't believe it. I didn't believe Ivan would be that kind of person, someone who could just forget the past. Since he was with me, he had already cut ties with others. If you don't believe it, you can go back and check your wedding room. See if there are still love letters I wrote to Ivan hidden there. With that, Charlotte left with a graceful air, but my heart was in turmoil. Later that night, I lay in bed with Ivan, as close to him as possible, getting the energy I needed. But when he became a little too carried away with his desire, I pushed him away. I turned my back to him. Humph. Stupid man. He started this mess, now let him deal with it on his own. I couldn't hold back and searched around the house. When I found the pink envelope tucked in the book Ivan often flipped through, all my unease turned into a solid, aching reality. I cried uncontrollably. By the time Ivan came home from work, my eyes were already swollen from crying. He walked over to me, cupped my face, and asked in concern, "What's wrong?" "Please explain this to me," I said, handing him the pink envelope. Seeing it, Ivan froze for a moment. His reaction only made my heart ache even more. "So, you really do still have someone else in your heart? If that's the case, why did you marry me?" Tears started falling again. Ivan hurriedly wiped my tears away. Baby, don't cry. Let's take a look at the contents of the envelope, okay? You can keep the love letters from other people, but now you want me to look at them? I cried even harder. Ivan, though pained, couldn't help but smile. His hands, long and graceful, opened the envelope and spread out the letter inside. Once you've read it, then you can cry some more. I looked at the letter, and after reading it, I couldn't cry anymore. The letter was from me. I remembered how many girls had sent Ivan love letters, all of which he had thrown away. But my letter, he kept it. Not only that, but at the end of my long, several thousand-word letter, I had written, "Will you be my boyfriend?" And underneath that, in a different handwriting, were the words, "Okay." What's going on here? Ivan asked, his sharp eyes noticing something was wrong. I told him everything about what Charlotte had said. And Ivan's face darkened. It looked like a storm was brewing. Charlotte is my chief secretary. The fake medical report was something I had her make, but I never imagined she would cause all this trouble. He gritted his teeth, clearly trying to figure out how to handle Charlotte. Ivan was decisive. The next day, he insisted on taking me to the company. As soon as we entered the building, I knew something was about to happen. Ivan suddenly looked at me. What's wrong? Did you sprain your ankle? Huh? When did I sprain my ankle? Confused, I was caught off guard as Ivan bent down and scooped me up into his arms, carrying me bridal style into the building. As countless envious glances were cast our way, I noticed Charlotte, her head hung low, being escorted away by the police. Spreading rumors without basis is a matter of legal responsibility, Ivan said to me. It was then that I understood Ivan's intentions. He had dealt with Charlotte, but he was also clearing my name, showing the people who had talked about me that he loved me. Realizing this, my heart felt as sweet as honey, filled with warmth and joy. I asked Ivan to get a physical exam. Once I was sure that getting the energy I needed wouldn't affect his health, I could happily stay close to him every day. But recently, my body started acting up again. I had been feeling nauseous and vomiting occasionally. I planned to endure it on my own, but when I was waiting for the results at the hospital, I couldn't hold back and contacted Ivan. He rushed to me as fast as he could, holding me in his arms. His breathing was heavy from running, and when I heard it, my nose felt tight with emotion. Ivan, if I have a terminal illness, you can immediately find someone else. I won't blame you. I've been sick all my life, many times near death. I had already made peace with the idea of dying. It used to be because I couldn't bear to leave my parents, and now, I couldn't bear to leave Ivan. Don't talk nonsense, Ivan scolded. There's nothing wrong with you. He comforted me, but I could feel him trembling. It was a tremor of fear, deep and overwhelming. Half an hour later, the doctor came in with the results. Seeing the red eyes of both of us, he was confused and spoke up. Didn't you two already get married? Is pregnancy really that hard for you to accept? Pregnant? After a moment of shock, I was overcome with overwhelming joy. Though my health was getting better, Ivan still wasn't reassured. He insisted I go through another comprehensive checkup to confirm that having a baby wouldn't affect my health. Only then did he finally relax. When we shared the good news with both sides of our parents, they were both shocked. My parents secretly asked, "Dear, have you cheated? Also, with your health being so fragile, can you really have a baby?" Ivan's parents secretly asked him, "Ivan, did you do something reckless just to carry on the family line?" Both sets of parents were trembling with concern. After exchanging a look with Ivan, I felt speechless. Ivan spoke first, that medical report was fake. I followed up, since being with him, my health has improved. I can breathe without issues now, and I can have a baby. After confirming that what we said was true, my parents were overjoyed. Both sets of parents were thrilled, not knowing how to react. After celebrating, they started discussing how they would help us raise the child. Ivan and I were both overwhelmed by their excitement. We exchanged a glance, and I pointed upstairs. He nodded, following me upstairs. I led him to my bedroom and walked to the window. You like reading in the yard, so I used to sneak peeks at you from here. Ivan embraced me from behind. Actually, I used to sit outside in the yard reading in the middle of winter. It was cold, but when I thought of you waiting by the window for me, I didn't feel cold anymore. So, all this time, he knew I was secretly watching him. At that moment, my heart reached its peak. I turned around, stood on tiptoe, and kissed him.
When I was 8, my parents moved us to a new house. On the day we moved in, a little girl fell right in front of me. She was too small and too thin, but her eyes, glistening with tears, were large. I couldn't help myself. I picked her up and gently comforted her. My parents teased me, saying how I used to hate interacting with others, but now I had the patience to calm a child. I hated it when they teased me, but at that moment, I didn't care. All I could think about was how soft and light she felt in my arms, wondering if the fall had hurt her badly. As I grew older, my studies became more demanding. The little girl seemed to suddenly grow up, blossoming into a beautiful young woman. But she seemed even more fragile. I often heard my parents mention that she was sick again. I didn't know when it started, but she began sneaking glances at me frequently. There were many girls who liked me, and I knew what those looks meant, but for the first time, I didn't find it annoying. One evening, during a power outage, I was reading outside when I noticed her bedroom window. She was also at the window watching me. The weather was getting colder. Reading outside in the yard was so chilly. But if she couldn't see me, she'd probably be disappointed for the whole day. It wasn't that cold. So many love letters had filled my backpack, making my books a mess. I just threw them all in the trash. But when I heard my parents mention that Anna, the girl next door, had also sent me love letters, I didn't care anymore and rummaged through the trash all night. Finally, I found one. In the letter, she said she wanted me to be her boyfriend. But she was in her final year of high school, and I was about to study abroad, unable to give her the companionship that a boyfriend should. So I decided to wait. I'd wait until I came back. But when I returned, she had become like a frightened kitten, hiding from me. A few times, I made excuses to visit her house, but she would go upstairs and refuse to meet me. She rarely watched me anymore. Did she not like me anymore? Or was she interested in someone else? For the first time, I regretted not being more proactive. I started feeling hopeless. When my parents repeatedly urged me to go on blind dates, I agreed. I took the fake medical report with me, letting everyone know about my condition, so no one would try to set me up with anyone anymore. After all, if the person I was meant to be with wasn't Anna, I'd never marry. I didn't expect my parents to push for me to marry Anna. The sound of the wedding march pulled me out of my thoughts. I looked ahead. At that moment, the girl I had watched grow up was walking toward me, wearing a white wedding dress. Step by step, she moved closer. This was a moment I would never forget. I knew, without a doubt, that I would be happy with her forever. End of the story.